But how does all of this explain the movement that occurs with dowsing rods? Let's think for a moment of a seismograph. This is a sensitive instrument designed to measure sudden movements in the Earth, such as those caused by earthquakes. Some seismographs are so responsive that they can catch subtle variations from the other side of the planet. Dowsing rods work on this same principle, but instead of being affected by the Earth's subtle movements, they're affected by the human nervous system.
A lot of different theories about how dowsing works. One that predominated for a long time was magnetism. The idea was that somehow the dowser was able to identify, or that there was a magnetic interaction between the dowser and the whatever's trying to be located. Now, this normally happened when the dowser was looking for water, or when the dowser was dowsing for minerals, or that kind of thing. That was the explanation that was used. And so they'd go and they'd douse for it, and supposedly there's this attraction that caused the rods to work or whatever. In fact, later on, when it seemed apparent that there was no such force that was strong enough to make these rods work, particularly ones made out of wood, which are non-magnetic anyway, the feeling got to be that there was some inner mechanism that dowsers possess. If you imagine yourself, for example, throwing a ball, even though it's just your imagination, the muscles that actually would be involved in throwing that ball actually get activated, and there are micro movements. Even though you never actually perform the motion, your muscles, in a way, perform it just at a much lower level, so that's not noticeable. And any time we have those kind of ideas of any kind of action or activity, our muscles respond at a very low level, so we're not even aware of it, but nonetheless it's happening. It's called the ideomotor response. When people go out to douse, then that ideomotor response, they're expecting to find water, and so when they come to a place where they think water is, even though they're consciously trying very hard not to move the rods themselves, there's this involuntary motion of the muscles, which they're not even aware of, that cause the instrument, the pendulum, the rods, or whatever, to actually move.
The nervous system can generate subtle movements that are undetectable by our conscious awareness, so it's easy to understand why some dowsers may believe that an invisible force is responsible for moving their tools when they use L-rods or pendulums. But the question still remains, how does the subconscious know the answers to the information you are seeking in the first place, especially information that would seem to be unobtainable, such as locating buried treasure, or knowing what the next winning color on a roulette wheel will be? This aspect of ESP-related skill might still be one of the most mysterious and controversial topics in related scientific research. But thanks to quantum physics, a theory called quantum entanglement may provide new insight into how the subconscious can obtain what some previously believed to be unobtainable.
There may be explanations available in quantum physics, but in only a narrow scope of it, a feature called non-locality, which has the idea that things are entangled. There's several different terms for it: Bell's theorem, non-locality, quantum entanglement. There's some interesting features of that part of quantum theory that might explain not just things like dowsing, but also things like remote viewing or ESP in general. The idea here is that physical particles, not subatomic particles, that become entangled sometime in their past, they establish kind of a causative correlation, so that when they're separated by a long distance sometime in the future, if you affect one, then you have an instant effect on the other. Some of the results of the experiments in this suggest the sorts of things you encounter when you're doing dowsing or remote viewing.
At one time, physicists believed that atoms were the smallest form of matter in existence. Then we discovered atoms were actually comprised of even smaller particles called electrons, protons, and neutrons. Today, we now know that even deeper levels of subatomic particles exist in the composition of all matter, including biological life, forms of energy, and neurons, a component for human thought. As the name implies, entanglement occurs when two or more of these subatomic particles form an association at what is now believed to be the lowest level of subatomic existence. The association between these particles allow influences that affect one particle to occur to the other, instantly and regardless of distance. As a result, some researchers refer to this as non-locality, nullifying the idea that information travels between the particles, and instead, that it is somehow already and instantaneously connected at another level of existence. While this may seem inconceivable to some, it's no more astonishing than at one time theorizing how the splitting of an atom could not only be possible, but that it could be harnessed as a destructive weapon. The advancements made within quantum mechanics, including the theory of quantum entanglement, may begin to provide the answers to how the subconscious mind is able to obtain information about an unknown or remote target, providing insight into the mechanics behind dowsing and all related ESP skill.